Hello, everybody. This is Gina Allen with Wink Women Incorporated. I'm super excited to be interviewing today Dr. Karen Kramer, who I have known for actually quite some time. And I'm super excited because she's got a lot of new stuff that's coming out, and we're going to share that with you today. Dr. Karen is the mindset facilitator, founder, and CEO of the VillaVision and Wellness Retreat here in San Diego, California. So, Dr. Karen, welcome. So glad you're here. This is going to be a fun interview. I love interviewing you.
Thank you, Jenna. I love working with you as well.
Aw. So let's just jump right into it, okay? Um, Tell me a little bit about what you do, because I know some people may not know you personally. What do you do? I'm going to let you share.
I love it. Well, I talk about it in two ways. What do? You mentioned the VillaVision Wellness and Retreat Center. So, as the founder and CEO of that, I love helping women process through grief to happiness, health, and wholeness. And this is not your typical retreat because I work from the inside out. So, I'll talk a bit about that. That's one thing I do. The other is as an author and speaker and grief recovery expert is really helping people, again, it's from the inside out, to be able to identify what is the root cause of even physical and minor ailments in the body. How can we prevent that, and how can we release it from the body? So when we talk about grief, that has a lot to do with how it settles in our body, and I know we both know that well.
Yes, and as you said, that grief, I just took this deep breath, because it's a journey, and I know we're going to get into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Um, so professionally, you
Mhm.
know, if you want to expand on that, feel free to expand on that.
Yes. So really stepping into the world of grief recovery expert. So let me talk about a little bit about that. So I've been been in the field of leadership development and coaching for the last 30 years. So really now taking it to the next level to say, what is it when I'm coaching individuals that is either getting them stuck, preventing them from moving forward, or they are achieving results, but they're sliding backwards? And so that's where I have really gotten into the world of doing more of the subconscious or unconscious work, is really diving down under what's underneath that. And one of the ways in which I describe it is somebody who may go to, let's just say, a traditional life coach or a traditional therapist or even a traditional doctor. In most cases, not in all, but in most cases, they're just dealing with it on the surface level. Like, hey, I just want to improve my self esteem. I want to get back into the business, or I just want to get over this trauma, or I'm dealing with this ailment, all of which I've really done more research, especially with a lot of the clients that I've had specifically in the last 2 years, to really identify what truly is underneath that. And I'll give you an example. Actually, this happened today. I just got off the call here about an hour ago with a client of mine, and really understanding around there's some family estrangement that is happening in her family. So it was around giving presents to her grandkids at this point in time. But it was understanding that she said, I want to give them unconditional love. But everything that followed after that was conditional. So let me give you an example around wanting to give a present. We're coming into the holidays, depending upon when we see this, but right now recording it going into the holidays. So wanting to give a present, but really what was for her, she wanted to get that acknowledgement from it. So it wasn't, as we're talking about it, we ended up diving down underneath around some topics and issues that had come up in her childhood associated with rejection, and I'm not good enough. People don't care about me. And so, if we're really going to deal with the issues that we're dealing with, that people are facing, let's dive down into the root, the sense of I'm rejected, I'm not accepted. And from a therapy perspective, we can easily get into that. What I like to do from a breakthrough perspective is quickly and easily, within over the course of 3 days, let's dive down. Let's get rid of that rejection. Let's get rid of that feeling of I don't care and I'm not enough. And speaking of which, Gina, which we know for a lot of the women, like what are some of those common beliefs that many of us as women have as we're getting into this business? And I'm not enough
Yep.
is one of those that shows up in many ways. I'm not old enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not capable enough. I'm not young enough. I'm not beautiful enough. I'm not smart enough. All this enoughness comes from it. And really, when we dive down deep and we identify it's this sense of enoughness, let's pull that root out. And when we pull that root out, the amazing power that comes from them, people stepping into their power, stepping in and owning who they are. I know I personally experienced that. You've known me over for more than a decade, and you even knew me before I got my enoughness root. I'm not enough pulled out. That's really allowed me to step in and shine. And that's what I want to help and do for other people,
Oh, gosh,
specifically for
that is
women.
so true for women in business. Yeah,
Yes.
I talk to women, same thing, and and it's one of those things where I think of it as if you saw yourself the way we see you.
Mhm.
Like for you, I've never known you to not think that you're not enough, right? You weren't enough. You didn't. I'm like, you're amazing. So you're doing great work, and I know you're helping so many people, women especially. Okay, let's keep going because like when I do interviews with you, I just feel like we can talk for hours. So because it's such good information,
Thank
but
you.
we can't talk for hours. But hopefully people will connect with you after this, after they learn more about things with you.
Thank you.
So what led you to this line of work? So before, when I knew you before 10 plus years ago, you were really focusing on more girls, like teen girls, that kind of thing, teens, 20s,
Mhm.
right? What led you into this work? Is it different than what you did before, or is it the same, similar? And how is it that you're here?
Yes. Well, I'll give some background on that. So, being in the world of leadership development and coaching, I worked with a lot more men. Let's put it that way. And when in 2009, I had an opportunity to step out of the corporate world. And part of that transition was a year, 2 years prior to that, I had married my high school sweetheart, one of those reconnected after 20 years, blended family. We had 5 kids ranging at the time we got married, they were 17 years spread from 4 years old to 21 years old at the time that we got married. And I was realizing that there was a lot of parallels between what was going on in each of my children's lives and also thinking about it from a leadership perspective, which, by the way, we had preschool, elementary, middle school, high school, and college age kids at that point in time.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was like a laboratory of me looking at their lens about different personalities and how it played out. So I was fascinated with that. And I was also fascinated with wanting to be the best mother and stepmother I could be. Okay. So when I know we relate that as women, wanting to be the best we can be for our children because they're our future generation.
Right.
So I had an opportunity. I stepped out of my six-figure corporate business because I wanted to focus on really staying at home and helping support the 3 youngest kids at that point in time. And I still wanted to keep up with the work that I was doing. So I specifically got certified as a teen girl life coach. So that's when I started my private practice back in the end of 2009. I think I got into Wink soon after that, right?
Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
also decided that I wanted to I was still doing the adjunct work. So I was still doing the leadership development and coaching work. And then I wanted my private practice to be something distinctly different. So that's when I was focusing on teens. And it quickly expanded because it wasn't just teens. I expanded it to 20 somethings, and it wasn't just girls because boys need it too. There's all this focus around girls don't get enough support, but boys need it too. And of my 5 kids, 3 were boys. And I can see that showing up for them as well. So I quickly became, at that time, was the only teen coach in San Diego that actually worked with boys as well, which is unfortunate. I don't know where it is right now at the time of this recording. But I hope that there's more out there that also work with boys as well. So I also worked with boys. And then I found over the course of about 10 years that I was actually working with more parents than I was the teens because they needed the support as well. And they were going through various different things. And then come along to 2018, where the love of my life walked out of my life for Valentine's Day. And as a coach, I thought I can DIY myself through my own divorce. Smart enough? No, we are the worst people to be able to coach ourselves through it. What is it? It's Einstein who said we cannot solve problems from the same level of thinking that created the problems, right? So that didn't go very far when I got into a series of personal development programs, and one of which was NLP, specifically neuro linguistics programming. And it's through that and hypnotherapy that it allowed me to tap into more of the subconscious, the unconscious work, and understanding like what's programming that I have had as far back to when I was younger that was allowing me to create the various different things that were happening in my life. Right? It was easy to point the finger and blame him and blame others for what was going on in my life. And now I can step back and say, although I don't wish divorce upon anybody, in my situation, it allowed me the platform to truly step into my power, which I hadn't stepped into before. I hadn't before. So it gave me that opportunity. And along those lines, then gave me the opportunity to help more people, step in and help women specifically. And it can quickly expanded into what I say now is grief. What is it that many of us, of mostly women, I work with men too, the grief, whether it is divorce, whether it is dealing with the death of loved ones, whether it is dealing with childhood traumas like sexual abuse. And those are the type of clients that I have been graced with and have the opportunity to support and help. And even more specifically here about earlier this year, I'm trying to think of months, had 3 clients within a 5-day period of time who also had ailments, minor and major ailments, that then came back and said, I no longer have that. So I'm not the one who says I heal people. That's not me. I've created an opportunity for people to allow their body to heal, and that has been so powerful because that then led me to say, now is the time for me to get this information out there to let people know 2 things. There's more than that, but 2 things. One, unresolved grief will settle in the body. Unresolved grief will settle in the body. And two, you catch it early enough, there is the opportunity to release it from the body, and it's quick and it's easy. And so those 3 examples that came my way all within a 5-day period of time, well, I'll share 2 of them and then another one that was related to that. I worked with a woman who was, in this case, she was going through a divorce, but she had significant sadness around her divorce. It was just debilitating, depression. Okay. She had mentioned when we worked together that she had an ovarian cyst that had become so inflamed that she was going in for surgery at that time. So we did the work, and a month later, we were doing the follow-up call, and she said, and I usually start in by, hey, what's going on in the last month? And she said, well, I went in for this surgery, and both me and my doctor were so surprised because the cyst was no longer there. Now, cysts can come and go, that's normal, but it got me to thinking about it. And I went back, and I call it my mind body Bible of looking at how is grief showing up in the body. Cysts are pockets of sadness. So when we release the sadness, we also release the blocked energy that was, when we released that, it allowed her body to heal. Okay. So that was number one. Number two was a client of mine who was just diagnosed with stage 2 colon cancer. I did a half day of work with her because I was actually in the process of training. So I said, come in. It was on a Sunday. I did 4.5 hours of work with her. And what came from it, and I could publicly share this because she actually is in my book, which is the reason why I wrote the book, is her doctor had said to her, Stephanie by name, so I'll give the details because she's like my poster child for this. He said, Stephanie, you may have just been diagnosed with this, but this has been growing in your body for 5 years. And it was at that point that she realized that this was 5 years minus 2 months to the day that her husband had tragically passed away. And she was carrying the guilt because she felt like she couldn't save him. And she was carrying that because she felt like she had to, like that was the albatross. That was what she had to carry because she could not save him that day. But she also talked about it where I think she described it as it was the sadness that was at the pit of my stomach. She was like ways in which she was talking about it. Well, sure enough, where's the colon? Near the pit of the stomach. And so when doing that work, we had to release that guilt and release that energy associated with it. And there's more to her story, but it's helping her body heal from that. So that was number two. In addition to that, about a month later, she introduced me to another client. And this is another reason why I write this book. And it's actually partially dedicated to this client as well. She was stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and there's only a 1 to 2% chance of survival. So I said, there's no guarantees. And I always say that there's no guarantees with this work. There's so many different dynamics associated with it. And I also know the clients that are open and ready for it. And I also know the clients that are like, yeah, do it to me. This is not about do it to you. This is about working with a client on this. And so I worked with her, and a lot of miraculous recovery came from that within that week and that month afterwards. And unfortunately, within 3 months after that, she had passed away. And so one of my goals, especially with healthy grief, is being able to get people to understand how how grief settles in the body. And I want to be able to get to people to help release it before it ends up turning to the point where your body just doesn't have the ability to be able to bounce back from that, to prevent clients like that passing away from stage 4 cancers and other things. So that's a bit about my background in regards to the work I do and the book that I have as well.
Oh my goodness. I can think of so many people that are they're gonna need the book, they're gonna need the work. And you know me, grief that I'm still going through. Just like you said, as a coach, you think, oh, I can coach myself. Yeah, no, you can't.
Yes.
We'll talk later about that. So talk to me about, we're going to keep going here with some more questions. What role has mentorship played in your entrepreneurial journey, and how has it impacted your success?
Yes, thank you, Gina. And I think I briefly touched upon that, the whole idea about trying to DIY myself through my own divorce.
Yeah.
Well, in the process of that, I also went to self-help books. By the way, I used to be the type of person who would go to Barnes and Nobles for about at 2 to 3 hours and walk out of there about $500 lighter, heavier books because I loved it. And so I even my bookshelf, actually, some of them are still stored after a house renovation, but my bookshelves are full of books, and I have 3 dozens of books that are sitting on my table that all many of which fed into this. So trying to do it myself, trying to go to the books, like somehow I'm going to read a book and it's going to help me. And then I started into seminars and podcasts and workshops, online things. But it wasn't, I even tried business development coaches. And I think what the number was within the first year and a half going into my divorce, it was $36,000 that I spent on 4, possibly 5 different business or life coaches at that point in time. And I'm going to say this from 2 perspectives. One is it got me far. Getting somebody in my life got me much farther than I was able to do. And one of the big things that I had for myself was in the middle of divorce is building my backyard oasis. I say that because that was a gift for myself and celebrating my 50th birthday around there. and also taking another leap in my business. So personally, as well as I lost 25 pounds during that period of time. Like there's a lot of things that I did during that period of time. And and also, so it got me to a point, and then also I realized that I still needed to stay there. Like did all this backyard work, but I still had some financial limiting beliefs that were popping up. I
Mhm.
lost weight, but there was still some work that was needing to be done there. So there were things, even my business, I was leveling up, but I was still dealing with some fears. So then I really got into this body of work. So there's answering like mentor, like getting you up to that level, and then recognizing like what are some of the limiting beliefs or the tremors or triggers or traumas that are there that was getting me to slide back. And so really building up not just mentorship, but also community. Wink is a community, which I love, to be able to support us in sustaining and staying there as we are leveling up and continuing to level up together.
That's right. I'm a big believer in that.
Yes,
That community, we need that community, especially as women. We need that
yes.
community in business and life because, speaking of grief, things happen, right? And where do you go to when that grief happens? Hopefully you have a support system that you can rely on. Sadly, I know some people don't. So, and that's probably where the trap trauma, like you were talking, all of that can happen, and then it goes into other things. So I'm not the doctor here, you are, so I won't get into that, but I
You love
do
it. I'm
understand.
right there with you.
I understand a lot of what you're saying. um, okay, so you talked a little bit about how you do the work that you do. Did you want to share anything more on that? Excuse me.
Yes, yes. So it's one thing to bring awareness, which is the intention of healthy grief, normalizing and navigating loss in a culture of toxic positivity. So that book is intended to raise awareness. From there, in this book, there's an easy 5-stage process to get people to think about. Now, this process that I have in here, it's a healthy grief framework, can be used with children up to elders and anybody in between. It really is an awareness. It's a series of questions to get you to think about where you are from logical, what information do I need, to heart, the emotion of what's
Mhm.
going on with me, to the feet, the action steps that I need to take, even into the hands. What support do I need? We just talked about mentorship because that's part of it. What support do I need, formal or informal? And then to focus on the eyes is thinking about what is that future vision? What is that new chapter for me? I think about it like a chapters of a book. You've just closed one chapter of a book. What is that process that'll fully step you into that next chapter in your life? So raising awareness with the book and then getting into the breakthrough immersion. But let me talk first before I get into the breakthrough immersion about grief. So we've kind of talked about grief, or most people think about grief as death and dying. Really, I expand grief out because grief is an everyday life. It's an everyday life in various different ways. So, what it is when a significant event happens, when you have a significant emotional event, when what once was is no longer. When, and this can be everything from death and dying to divorce. It can be something like a client I recently had is retirement. When she retired, everybody's like, hey, you're supposed to be happy. And she's like, I just lost my structure. And where's my funds going to come in? And my social life was all around that. And I love to travel and I'm not doing that anymore. So that was a loss for her. So any kind of significant loss, empty nester is a loss. Um, Changing careers and changing titles is a loss, and even a loss of hopes and dreams is a grief. It's a loss. Any kind of loss when what once was is no longer. It can be a physical event, or it can be something emotional or psychological when you're like, I'm just giving up on that hope and dream. That can be a significant event. So any kind of grief, like everyday grief that can happen, and many people think about it like stress, when I'm stressed or some other event. But let's identify that. So again, the healthy grief framework is the idea to be able to be aware of and to be able to help people process through that. The book also has 30 grief survival stories that are in here. They are case studies that are in here. Some are myself, some are my clients, some are other colleagues that I have, but they're really the idea that there's no one way to be able to process through grief. And I didn't want this framework to be like, you have to do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. No, it's all over the place. So what I did is I pulled together some very powerful stories that really show readers the opportunity to say, how does this person process through that 5-step model I just briefly shared with you? How do they do it? What support did they have? What were some emotions that they processed through? What were the action steps? Who did they turn to? What did their next chapter look like for them? So these 30 stories are various different ways to be able to look at and process through to give people who are going through grief hope and ideas to know that they're not alone on this journey. So that's where the book comes in. And then one-on-one engaging with me is a breakthrough immersion where I have clients who are all over the world, not even here locally, all over the world. So during a 90-day period of time, they get to work with me. And the first 3 days is when we do the full immersion. So they get the opportunity of coming to the VillaVision Wellness and Retreat Center. They stay here on site. I work with them over the course of the 3 days. They get access to the pool, the jacuzzi, the infrared sauna. I also have an on-site esthetician who's here. I have a mobile massage therapist. So we're talking about the full individual retreat that is here coming in. And the reason why I have added in the retreat aspect beyond just doing the work is when we're talking about getting into that subconscious and unconscious work, and we're releasing a lot of energy, having that body work from a massage or a facial or even the infrared sauna, jumping in the jacuzzi, whatever it is for them, it's having that whole body experience to be able to easily and quickly release it from their body, as well as just doing the follow-up calls that are after that. So the book is the awareness for breakthrough when they want something to just go deep, go quick, and release whatever's getting in the way. That's the breakthrough immersion.
Oh, that sounds amazing. And I've been to your retreat center, so I love it. Your pool is amazing. I love that pool. So, ladies,
Thank
you better
you.
check it out. It's amazing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about you just published a book, which I'm excited to get my hands on because, as we've talked, dealing with my own grief and losing my brother. The title of the book is Healthy Grief Normalizing and Navigating Loss in a Culture of Toxic Positivity. And I will tell you, that is so true. Um, we just want to positivity our way out of everything, don't we, in society? And that is not reality at all, at least not for me. Um, so, can you share a pivotal moment that influenced the writing of this book?
Yes, I'd be happy to. I've shared a bit already about some of the things that really got me into, yes, this is the time to write it when I had those 3 clients in that 5-day period of time. But really, it's been building up. So in 2012, I had one of those days. I had one of those days which I was just lost it. So, Gina, for you or for others who are watching this, like, have you ever had one of those days where it just builds up and you're just blah, all over the place, right? And you're like, you just snap. It's like a rubber band and you just snap. Okay. So I had one of those days. I screamed and yelled at my kids. I was bickering with my husband. I even cussed out and hung up on my mother and both of my brothers. I had just completely lost it. Okay. So let me backtrack to that. So in the process of that, after looking at all the aftermath, I'm like, okay, I obviously have like done some damage here. So I thought, okay, I will go to a therapist. So I went to a therapist, and to be honest, this is nothing against therapists because I've had some well-meaning therapists in the past. I think she was a newly minted therapist. She looked at my degrees and like, oh, I think that was the start of it. And she basically diagnosed me with social anxiety. I walked out of there with a label and a box, check box. She even looked at me and she goes, "Oh, I think you have social anxiety, don't you?" I'm like, I wouldn't know what that is, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah.
And so she checked box, gave me a label, sent me off to anxiety group something or other. I don't even remember it, and did not help me. So then I thought, okay, well, I was in my early 40s at that point in time. So I thought, well, maybe I'm going through menopause. Oops. So I went to my doctor and I explained everything that was leading up to that day that I had my little breakdown. And within 2 minutes, she wanted to shove me full of drugs. Like, okay, hormonal this, and oh, we can even put a patch in you. You ready to go? Like, I can insert it today. I'm like, no, like I'm not the type of person who, I mean, I barely take like ibuprofen or over the counter drugs. I'm like, no, aside from vitamins, I do not want to do that. And so I came home and my husband, still towing around me, said, "You know, 7-day destination spa that you've always wanted to go to, maybe this is a good time to go there." Like, okay, so I did that and it was wonderful, Gina. Went there and I got away from everything, ate healthy food, did exercising, had massages and everything. It was wonderful. Then within 2 hours of being home, I was bickering with my husband again. And it had nothing to do with my husband and everything to do with me. So let me tell you about what led up to that day is on that day that I had my breakdown, I had just made this decision to put my 18-year-old beloved cat to sleep. And I was calling my mom, and there are some things that came up with my family around that, but it wasn't, and what came up on the family had something to do with some family dynamics that was less about what came up at that point in time, but it was just, my rubber band was so tight
Mhm.
because a month prior to that, my father had passed away, and I had been ignoring the emotions associated with the grief process. Yeah, I can handle that. I'm good. I'm okay. I can handle the logistics. Yeah, we're going to handle this and do this, like all in my head, right? All the logistics, all of that. I was ignoring the emotions that were going on with that process. And so the critical thing was putting my cat to sleep, another loss, and then this conversation with my mom, which had something to do with my family. And I just snapped.
Mhm.
So that is what started the whole process for me, is having an understanding for people about what are some various different ways to identify grief. What are various different ways to healthfully step into the grief process? And I'm really focusing on healthfully stepping in, not ignoring it, but healthfully stepping into it and acknowledging that, and there's well-meaning professionals that are out there. Therapists have been designed and trained to diagnose, and medical professionals are also trained to diagnose what medication, what label can we place on that, what surgery can we do. And really, when we dive down underneath that, and I could tell you, Dr. Gabor Mate and Dr. Van der Kolk are two popular ones, The Myth of Normal and The Body Keeps a Score. One's a physician and one is a therapist who will tell you this as well, is there's something broken in our system that just wants to focus on the surface level symptoms of things, to medicate and numb us, to label us with some kind of mental illness without dealing with the issues that are underneath there. And I was getting caught into that system. I was dealing with grief, but the therapist and the doctor were not there. And this is not about them personally, it's with the system. It's like quick diagnosis, right? You come up with these symptoms. Oh, you must be menopausal. You must be going through, you must be anxious, right? So we're going to quickly diagnose you and then give you this medication or send you off to this degree. No, get down to the root cause of it. So that's what really backed me into not only opening up the VillaVision Wellness and Retreat Center, but also informing people that there are other options associated with them. And again, this is nothing against therapists and the medical professionals. This is an idea of opening it up and saying, what are various different options that are out there, rather than just wanting that quick fix of a diagnosis or the quick fix of some kind of medical pill or something that's going to magically make whatever's going on for us go away when we're not dealing with the root.
Yeah. Yeah. I dealt with that with my daughter when she was 8 or 9, having panic attacks in 10 minutes. The psychiatrist said, you need this psychotropic drug for her. Never been tested on children. And yeah. So I understand that, it's just, at least in that, for us, that's what happened. And we chose to go a different route. Thank goodness we went a different route. Because can you imagine almost 20 years later being on a drug that had never been tested on
No,
children?
but there's so many different people out there, whether it's tested or not. And
Yep.
this is the books I just mentioned, The Body Keeps Score talks about it, like numbers of people who are on certain kinds of drugs, um, and those coming PTSD, military on PTSD,
Mm-hmm.
that are now hooked on or have to continue to live on these drugs. And in some cases, there is some drastic side effects to being taken off, when really it's not, just having the tools or opportunities to be able to deal with and release the trauma that's underneath that.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
and
our the medical pharmaceutical is winning from that.
yeah, absolutely. I just want to touch before we go on to another question. PTSD, people automatically assume it's just military related, but PTSD can be anything. Like for me, the trauma I went through with the loss of my brother, and
Right.
anybody can have it. It's not just military related. And so I think that there's been that stigma too of, well, I'm not military, so I couldn't have PTSD. Yeah, you could. I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
you work with people, especially in your line of work, seeing that,
Yes. In fact, one of the case studies that is in My Healthy Grief, he was diagnosed with CPT, CPTSD. All of this like starts to get kind of convoluted, but it's complex PTSD. And therapy and medical, they're just exploring all those. And again, I'm all into, let me backtrack. I'm not into labels or diagnosis.
Right.
It helps say that there's certain patterns of behaviors that are starting to show up. And I'm more into, what are those patterns of behaviors versus slapping a label on them, first of all. And to the point that you have, Gina, is yes, it has been more labeled associated with those who have been coming out of the military, specifically with the war, because that's where they were studied. They
Mm-hmm.
found that those behaviors were more common with those that were affected by the war and experienced by the war. However, those behaviors so similar behaviors can show up in many different ways. Car accident victims are a perfect example.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. My daughter has dealt with that. She's had 3 car accidents, 2 that were motorcycles. She's very afraid of motorcycles on the freeway now. So that is interesting that you mentioned that. I thought about, I mean, I knew that about her, but yeah, it is a difficult thing for her. Um, Gosh, we can go on and on about this, but I wanted to touch on that because I don't want people, if they're watching this, to assume that you can't have something like a PTSD, whatever the label is.
Mhm.
No need for label, but that you don't just have to be military. That you can be dealing with that, and that you can help them with that. So, I want to
Definitely.
broaden that for people that might be watching
Thank
this.
you. Yes,
Yeah.
please broaden. Yes.
Okay, so what legacy do you hope to leave as a woman in business? This is a big
Mm,
question, and I really want women to think about this. What do you
yes.
want, and not just a woman in business, I mean a woman in general, but a woman in business. What do you hope your legacy, your footprint's going to be?
Mm. You ready for this? Because this
Hmm.
came up this weekend. A world healer.
Oh,
A world
wow.
healer. Right now, our world is truly hurting. I mean, think about it, from what's going on around the world to post COVID. There's still a lot of unrest when it comes to like political unrest and other things.
Mhm. Yeah.
So really for me, when I sat with it this weekend, it really was world healer. So that's on a grander level. And what I mean by that is the more people that I have the opportunity to educate or touch, just to know that one, whatever you are dealing with and however it may be showing up in your body is an indication of that, that you have the various different opportunities to be able to release that beyond traditional ways in which we've thought about that. I think
Hmm.
that's one thing with COVID where it really opened it up to us where people were being, trust is the word that was coming to me. Like they're starting to distrust. There was distrusting politics. There
Yeah.
was distrusting what medical, especially around the whole COVID and vaccines and all the misinformation. So starting to distrust medical, starting to distrust therapy, trying to figure out, the traditional therapy routes. And so when I say that is it's just getting us to shake us up to say, well, if this way of believing about something is not what's going to help me. What is? It's getting us to think bigger and differently about things. So that's why I know in the last 3 years or so, really, it's this whole idea about really tapping into our body, understanding the subconscious mind better, is more aware of that, and also making that mind body connection is there's more people are more open to it. Let's put it that way. So that's from the world healer perspective. And the other side of it, and this gets down even more personally for me and why I've opened up the VillaVision Wellness and Retreat Center, is I'm sitting on family land here in San Diego. And it's been 80 years at this point in time. And prior to my mom's passing, which by the way was 2 years ago, this is another reason why I wrote the book. My oldest brother and my mother passed away within 2 weeks of each other. And a month after that, my other brother was diagnosed with dementia. So I felt like I truly had lost three family members in about a 6 week period of time. So when backtracked to the land, as I prior to my mom's passing, I said, well, mom, what do you want to do? And by the way, my mom was a healer. So I'm a product of an engineer dad and a clairvoyant psychic mother. Okay. So I deal with both the logical research, give it to me, real hands, can I touch it? And also the intuitive side. And I think that's the power of working with my clients now is that I can talk about it from a logical perspective as to what I do, but to be honest, the intuitive side and that healing side honestly comes through with my clients too. So I do that on the side, even though I talk about it more on the logistical side. That's just who I am. So from that perspective, I really talked to my mom and I said, where do you see this land? And she had this vision, and I don't even know whether it's my vision or my mom's vision, but continuing to see it as an opportunity to help more people and eventually bringing in other holistic health practitioners. That is the full vision for the VillaVision, is once it's built out, is being, because right now it's buying out the land. So building it out is bringing in other health practitioners. So if you think about it from a perspective of somebody who goes to a traditional spa, like you walk in and say, hey, Gina, would you like a pedicure? Would you like a manicure? Would you like a massage? Would you like a facial? Whatever it is. But imagine in this case, you walk in and a concierge takes some background information. Oh, I've just gone through divorce and I have an ovarian cyst. Oh, I was just diagnosed with colon cancer. Whatever it is that they traditionally would go to a doctor or therapist or traditional coach of some sorts. But coming here to the VillaVision Wellness and Retreat Center with with the concierge, and the concierge then can take some background information, do that intake, brief intake, and provide them 2 to 3 different services or practitioners to be able to help them process through that. I've been blessed to work with um, breathwork facilitators, yoga, sound bath, and other things. These are individuals who have come in for my retreats to help support and provide their services. And it's really the beginning of being able to do that in such a way that it's not just a traditional retreat or come and do moon circles. I'm putting them in quotes just because I want to say these are the ways in which people have talked about more the holistic work. And I want to bring it in and more of a almost a medical facility of sorts to be able to say, this is an opportunity to relax, and this is an opportunity to truly heal, not just from a massage or facial or something like that, truly heal from the inside out permanently, not just walk away like I did from a 7-day destination spa and then start getting back and bickering with your husband again. Not that. Truly healing from the inside out. So my legacy is to leave that with this land. And I've already had conversations with my youngest son, and I said, this is what I'm doing, and this is the legacy I'm leaving for you, my son, who will be 21 next month, to be able to carry on in his own way. So that's my legacy.
Oh my word, that's a big legacy, girl. I know you're going to do it though.
Yes,
as long as I've known you, I've been watching you, and you've done a lot of good work, and will continue to do good work. And I'm,
it's
as I said,
happening. It's
yeah,
happening.
absolutely. And the book is going to be, I can't wait to get my hands on your book. So, all right. What advice would you like to leave with our audience today?
Hmm. Pay attention to your body.
Mm,
The body speaks in so many different ways, and we've been so trained with traditional ways of operating that if I wake up with a headache, for example, that I just take a pop a pill and move forward, when that headache, for example, could be saying, hey, maybe you need more sleep, maybe you need more water, maybe you're stressed, maybe you're dealing with deeper anxiety or fear about the future.
mhm,
So when we have those minor aches and pains in our body, and let's start there with the minor ones, the tensions in the shoulders, the headaches or migraines. I know we've talked about migraines and things, lower back aches. Our body is speaking to us.
mm,
Pay attention to it.
mm,
Honor it before you just try to numb it out with taking that ibuprofen or getting some extra rest or icing it or heat. It's really paying attention to it. And the more we pay attention to our body, the more that it lets us know what it truly needs.
mm.
That's the first step to truly healing.
That is good. Oh my word. Well, Karen, I'm excited for this new book and the journey that you're on and everything that's going on for you in life and in business. You've been such a blessing to me. And show us again the book, and let's talk about the title of it and where can they get the book? Is it available now?
Yes. So healthy grief, I know with this, it's a little hard to see the cover, and this is actually just the prototype for the cover. So healthy grief, normalizing and navigating loss in a culture of toxic positivity. Right now, it is only available on my website, and I'm going to talk a bit about that. It's only available. So I want to make sure that I get this book in the hands of as many people as possible, especially during the holidays. My publisher and I made a conscious choice that right now, when we first publish it, it was not going to be on Amazon. Okay, so you will not find this book on Amazon right now. So Gina, I will give you the link. So whenever you're seeing this, you will see a link below that'll go directly to this book and how you can get your hands on it. So part of this was I chose that I actually Brene Brown. Okay, if you Brene Brown, you love Brene Brown. I do too. She's another influence on this book. And when I was doing the publication or actually doing the research for this book, she's actually mentioned a lot in this book as well. I love her audiobooks, and she's an amazing person. If you've ever listened to any of her audiobooks, amazing. So I listened to Atlas of the Heart. That was the last one. And halfway through it, I'm like, oh no, I have to get her physical book. This is just amazing. I need to get her physical book because I want to be able to reference it. When I opened up her book, and I chose to get the hard copy book, and I'm so glad I did. When I opened up her book, I felt, and this actually is, it's the cover is the prototype, but this actually is her physical book that's here right now. So when I opened it up and I pulled it out, I felt like I was receiving a gift. I truly did. And it's about the size of a box of chocolates. So I felt like I was receiving a box of chocolates, really heavy. It's a hard copy book. And I said to my publisher, I want people to feel like this when they get their book. So I made a conscious choice that I am only doing it in hard copy, that it is about the size of the book and I wanted people to have the same feeling I did when they got the book, like I did when I got it from Brene Brown's book. So it is only in hard copy, and the way in which we're controlling some of that is then we're publishing it ourselves. I do have a publisher, but we're not putting it on Amazon yet. In the future, yes. I'm not going to tell you when, but in the future, we are looking at the soft copy and other things. But I also want to tell you a bit about what's in it, because some people have said, well, when are you going to do the audiobook? Guess what? This hard copy has a version of the audio in it.
Great.
So
I was going to
I
ask you that question.
mentioned
When are you doing the audiobook?
I put as much into it as I can, Gina. I'm so excited about this. So in there, I already mentioned there are 30 grief survival case studies that are in there, 40 of them that are in there. Well, I shouldn't say every single one of them, but you will have audios to every single one of those stories. The reason why I hesitated on there is a majority of them went ahead and they actually recorded their own stories. So mine are in there as well. So whether I'm stumbling over words, breaking down, crying, backtracking on things, adding in certain side notes and things like that, I told my storytellers, I said, I want you to record this. I don't want it to be perfect. I want you to record it, and I want you to imagine that you are sitting on the couch next to the person who is reading this book. I want to imagine that you're sitting in a Starbucks drinking coffee and you're across the table from this. So everyone, and there's some people who are anonymous, like I have some clients in there who chose not to put it under their name. And so there are some that are AI generated stories that are in there, meaning they're audio stories, but a majority of them are by the actual storytellers themselves. So the way in which it is in here. I've also packed it in such a way that there is the free website that you go to as a reader. There's a QR code and link that's in here that has all the stories that are in there. So you can sit with the book in front of you and listen to that storyteller read their story as if you're sitting across from them directly. And also that website has a number of free resources as well that I've stuffed with it, and I'm going to continue to put that in there. So this book is much more than a book. It's a movement. I keep on saying it's more than a book. It's a movement that's in here. And again, there's so many different resources because I truly want to help people heal. And each of us heals, the world heals.
Yeah. Mm, good stuff.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to get my book. Oh, well, thank you so much, Dr. Karen Kramer of the VillaVision Wellness Center and Retreat. I'm honored that I've known you for this long and to watch your journey and to myself learn from you. Thank you for being on this interview today, and
Thank you, Gina.
excited to share you with my world. So
Do it.
absolutely, and we'll have all the links. We'll have the links for your website, and once we get the link for the book and everything, we'll have the link for that too. So thank you
Okay.
so much for this, and have a great day. We'll see you soon.
You too. Thank you, Gina.
You bet.
Everyone.